Hello, Atul, and welcome to the podcast. How are you, sir?
I'm doing great. It is so good to see you again. It's been over 25 years now that we were in Philadelphia together. Glad to be on this podcast. Thank you for having me on.
Well, you are very welcome. I'm glad you could be on. I've talked to a lot of different people, and I have found that, probably unsurprisingly, some of my most enjoyable conversations are when I get to chat and reconnect with old friends. So I'm very happy you said yes. But I have you on here not just because you're an old friend, but because you have a lot of interesting experience from the past and a lot of interesting things going on right now. So, just for the people who haven't known you for 25 years, can we get the 1 minute sort of Atul, um, who you are and what you're doing these days? It's like a 1 minute quick, like, what are you up to these days? How would you describe yourself if we were at a networking event and you introduced yourself?
Sure. So I've been in the restaurant industry for 12 years. Really glad that I ended up in this space. Super fun industry niche to be part of. And what I do is business development for both tech companies selling into restaurants and for restaurants themselves. A couple of passions of mine are getting complex technical solutions like drones or robotic burger makers in engaged with restaurant chains. And then I'm also particularly fascinated by the opportunity to build a fast casual Indian brand nationally and internationally. Those are the things I'm doing right now.
That's fascinating because we're already off on a tangent now. Because I'm obviously not the first Indian person that ever thought of this either, but I feel like every time I go to like a Qdoba or Chipotle or a Meza or any of those places, I do think like, why is there no Indian version of this? Because it seems like that would be such a no, especially because Indian food is good when it kind of sits and stews for a long time in those binnies. Like, it's fascinating. So that's something you're working on. Are you working on that as yourself? Are you working with a company, or is this just an idea you have?
I'm working with two established chains. One is called Curry Up Now. They are Bay Area centric. They've been around for 17 years. Great brand, great food. Primarily again on the West Coast in Northern California. And then another one is called Kati Roll Company. They're out of New York,
Hmm.
and they serve these kati rolls, which are parathas wrapped around meat or paneer. And That's excellent. 8 units growing to 22 units. So it is the time, right? Mediterranean is having its moment with Cava and a few other brands.
Mm-hmm.
Chipotle was obviously there earlier. And there's a market opportunity for Indian. And I hope to be part of a growth story with one of these brands.
Well, that's fascinating, and we could probably talk a lot about that, but that's a little off topic. I was just curious. So let's talk about you, and let's start with your sort of current work. So you said you're doing um, business development, which is that just a fancy name for sales? Like what when you say business development, what do you mean by that?
Yeah, it is I'll say it's both a fancy name and a squishier name for sales.
Mm-hmm.
Salespeople tend to be measured at the end of every month, definitely at the end of every quarter, by accounts closed, revenue booked, meetings booked even. Business development is, in my mind, more strategic, where it's not necessarily about the short-term quick win. It's about the longer-term partnership that you develop with a client or a partner in order to have a non-linear impact on revenue. So it's not just the one good deal at the end of the week or one good deal at the end of the month. It's one good deal that really changes the trajectory of a company. I'll give you an example. I work with a drone delivery company, um, and they've been in healthcare for 15 years, transporting blood samples, tissue samples, things like that. They believed that the volume in food delivery would be significantly greater than healthcare. And We've just announced a pilot with Dave's Hot Chicken.
Hmm.
That foray into food delivery dramatically impacts enterprise value. We've just filed to go public.
Wow.
And so business development is much more strategic than I would say sales is.
Got it. And so, in a lot of ways, it sounds like, to be very old and cliche, the Eisenhower matrix, like the important versus urgent. It sounds in a lot of ways, not that sales in the short term isn't important as well, but it's much more urgent. Whereas the business development takes that, like, what are the important things we can do that maybe aren't urgent? Like, if you don't build that relationship today, it's not going to hurt you today. But it's basically having a longer view about like what's really important down the road, as opposed to just you know eating what I hunt right now.
I'm going to steal that from you. That's a great way to put it.
Ooh, I love it. Yes, steal away,
Yeah.
steal away.
Yeah.
And so how did you get into this business development, especially niched into kind of the restaurant? How did you get into that space?
Yeah, so I've always been in business development ever since my second job. My first job was in investment banking in New York. Second job was with a software company called Trilogy down in Austin, Texas, and business development comes naturally to me. It is much more relationship oriented than sales is, I would say.
Mm-hmm.
Really about the long-term opportunity of building a relationship and leveraging that relationship to drive value for both parties. So throughout my career, I have focused first and foremost on developing, nurturing, and maintaining a network of good friends. And that lends itself naturally to business development. I had a varied career in technology outside of the restaurant industry before I entered it. I was never really happy being in tech outside of restaurants, to be honest.
Hmm.
Although I have an engineering degree, I was never a good engineer. I'm not good at getting into the weeds of APIs and product documentation and specs and whatnot. I'm much more of kind of a high level guy who can understand the basics, but leverages solutions engineers or technical people to get into the details. And I was given the opportunity at what was a trying time in my life that I'm sure we'll talk about to interview with McDonald's. And McDonald's was hiring business development talent in the Bay Area to help interface with the Silicon Valley startup community. And I got the opportunity to join them. I led various aspects of their relationships with venture capital. I ended up leading global food delivery for them, and I ended up leading other technology partnerships from the buyer side, from the McDonald's side, of how to allow tech startups from the Bay Area to engage with a Fortune 30 behemoth.
Mm-hmm.
And I loved that. And I spent a couple of years there. Then went and helped start a company called Kitchen United, which was in the ghost kitchen space,
Mm-hmm.
which was restaurants for delivery and takeout only. And I did business development there. I signed deals with Chick-fil-A, I signed deals with Wendy's, signed deals with Kroger. And it is a skill set, I think, that comes naturally to extroverts, and I'm very much an extrovert. And the real secret sauce there is that you always look for win-win solutions and win-win situations. And I've been able to find that, thankfully, throughout my career. And now, what I do is I represent multiple tech companies selling into restaurants, really leveraging my decade plus of experience in the restaurant industry and the relationships I've developed to help companies add value to restaurant brands and then
Mm-hmm.
drive enterprise value for themselves.
So it's so interesting to me because you said you're an extra. It's great for extroverts, and I'm the opposite end of the spectrum. Like I'm more introverted and shy, and I'd be perfectly happy just talking to my friends, yes, but just doing my own stuff, writing my own material, hopping on a stage, hopping right off. So I would like to dig into this a little bit because for the listenership of this podcast is varied, but it's it's not specific to business development or sales or restaurants. So, but I want to expand that because it seems at the core what you're really talking about. You touch upon this already is sort of relationship building, and it's something you've been very good at. And I think that is something that would apply sort of broader towards kind of the types of things that I talk. Because at the end, yes, and is very much about relationships and about connecting and whatnot. So I want to. What is sort of your approach? I mean, it's sort of a broad question, but like my mind doesn't work that way. It's not that I don't like people. It's not that I don't want to give value. It's just I'm just more withdrawn. So, kind of, what is your process? What has your process been to both build and develop and maintain sort of a network and relationships that people can take away from as they're listening to this?
Well, I would say my uh, my first point of view or theory or mantra as I get into a new relationship is actually from the great philosopher Winnie the Pooh. And that is a quote which is, "We'll be friends for life, just you wait and see." Um, and uh, and that's the attitude I go into every relationship with, every new meeting with, every interaction with somebody who introduces me to somebody else. I go in with the expectation, the true expectation that I will be friends with this person for life. And more often than not, it plays true. I might not be in touch with that person every day or every week or every month or even every year, but I go in with the expectation that if that person called me and needed help, I would be there to help. And I think that mindset leads you inevitably into truly trusting, rich friendships.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and those translate both into kind of the personal sphere and the professional sphere. It's always, everybody says and knows that people like doing business with people they like.
Mm-hmm.
I will not do business with people I don't like. I walk away from people if I don't find them nice or trustworthy or
Mm-hmm.
kind. And that aspect of my mindset has treated me really well. I say on my LinkedIn profile, for example, that friendship matters more to me than anything else, and it really does. So I will never close a deal or fight to close a deal when it might jeopardize a friendship. I'll never try to close a deal when I don't believe it's in the right interest of a client. And as a result of that, and then as a result of my extroverted nature, I have a tremendous number of friends. I'm fortunate to be able to leverage those friendships for business purposes. And it's worked really well from a business development standpoint. I do spend a lot of time, and one of the ways I think you can develop and then nurture an extended set of relationships is when somebody runs across your mind, reach out there and then. Um,
Hmm.
I will be walking down the street and I will see a kava, and I'm friendly with the CEO of Kava. And I will text or email him and say, "Hey, just noticed you have a kava in, Brooklyn over here. Didn't realize you'd opened this one yet." And just that quick text message keeps you top of mind. And then when you're reaching out to that individual to sell them something, you're already top of mind because you've pinged them 3 or 4 times over the last year with a personal note, and not something that is salesy.
Well, there's a couple things in there that just I mean, the first one is just so simple, and it's funny because it's so basically the yes and yes but thing about because being someone who values my sort of isolated time.
Yep.
I often default. I mean, as much of a yes and speaker as I am, I often have that like yes but relation when it comes to meeting new people. Not necessarily if you were like to introduce me to someone, I wouldn't be like oh, but when it's the thought of like going into a networking meeting or a conference and this thought of like it's like it almost the doubts of like what if this person's annoying? What if they ask me for too much? What and a lot of it's just the inner self doubt of like what if I can't offer any value to them or what if
Yep.
they don't like me. And this is switching that Winnie the Pooh mentality of just like, this person is going to be a friend for life. It just completely flips the expectation and the whole feeling around it. Now I'm going to steal something from you. That's a,
Awesome.
that's a,
And it does apply to the yes and philosophy, right? If I were to put it into your words, and somebody says, I want to introduce you to Jeremy, my response is generally yes, and what can I do to help Jeremy? It's not why are you introducing
Yeah.
me? It is what can I do to help that person if they're and look, I believe in the transitive nature of friendships, right? If you're friends with Mike Worth and you introduce me to Mike Worth, I will automatically step into that as a friend because a friend introduced me. So the transitive nature of friendships is something very powerful as well. And when we get into it for business development for yourself, if there are any kind of people who run their own businesses out there, referrals are the best way to do business development.
Well, yeah, well, let's get into that because I was about to ask you anyways. And it's funny you transition with that. The little section of the podcast I like to call free consulting for Avish. Uh, it's it's what I struggle with, and I'm sure some people do as well. Is I'm sort of good at that initial. You know, someone introduces me, we have a call like this, we get to know them, we like each other, and then it just sort of like goes away. So, and then a year or two goes by, you're like, oh, I never reached back out. Like, we had a great first conversation. So, the maintaining, and I like your idea you said about just if they come top your mind, you should reach out to them, and I think that's a great, and it takes the pressure off too. It's not like I need to send you a formal like email or message like, hey, let us at a time. It's just like, oh, saw this, thought of you, quick note. Um, but I always find like the next step hard, like how do you transition, how do you take that like friendly conversation and then grow it to a point where then you can reach out. Obviously you can give them value if you can refer to them, but on the flip side, like how do you then turn that into business for yourself, I guess. And that sounds more selfish than I mean it to sound. It's not like how do I get something out of this, but like that transition always feels awkward to me. Like, all right, we've had like a conversation and then it just sort of ends after the first conversation.
Yeah, that's a great question, and it is a tricky thing often to navigate. I'll tell you, without applying science to it, I've recognized a few things that I intuitively do that have served me really well.
Mm.
One is when you meet somebody, follow up with that person two or three times in relatively quick succession in a relatively short period of time. So an example is you introduce me to Jeremy, and I have a call with him. If he's local to me, I will immediately suggest taking him out to lunch. So meeting in person, nothing can top that if you're in the same proximate area. If you're not, um, following up with a thank you note after the first meeting, following up a week later with, hey, by the way, since we spoke, here's a couple of things that have happened that were relevant to the conversation we had, following up a week after that with another note. And if you do two or three touches within the first month, then you've established a rapport that is leading towards a friendship. And then it can decrease in frequency. And then also say a couple of weeks after that, you can say, by the way, just wanted to share that I closed this new client. This is what they do. This is what I'm doing for them. Wanted to flag that for you in case you know anybody or you have a need at your own company. It's the two or three touches in the immediate follow-up that is most relevant to driving a successful relationship with that individual. And it
Mm.
two or three touches in the first month. And then from there, it can be 6 months before you actually talk to that person again, and it won't make a difference because you've built that rapport in the first month.
I love that, and it's again, it's my job to promote myself. So I, tie again back to my book again, taking my own medicine is one of the principles of this yes and framework is start small and take small steps. So it's like that simple thing of just, I think myself, I know as an introvert, it's like you want to hit a home run every time you step up to the plate, but it's like, no, just a simple follow up, right? Like a quick message. Hey, great meeting you. Another, a couple quick follow ups, maybe offering some advice, info, whatever. Just those little things. It just, again, it flips the framework right there, just like the Winnie the Pooh thing. Instead of thinking, oh, how can I turn this relationship into business? It's like, oh, let's just little steps, little steps. Um,
Yeah. And it could be something as irrelevant as, um, an article that you run across that references a point that you guys raised in your first conversation. It's almost throwaway material, right?
yeah.
It is just being in touch in that time frame for the purpose of being in touch. The content of what you share or discuss is less relevant. It is the communication that is more relevant, and that will lead to a tighter relationship that will potentially lead to business. The other thing I often do is in those first conversations, even with new people, after establishing my credibility, competence, personality, I ask for an introduction to somebody else they think I should meet.
Are you asking them for like the person, or you're saying in general like,
In general, if I'm meeting you for the first time and I'm saying, hey, I represent this drone delivery company and you work for Paris Baguette, um, and by the way, do you know anybody else I should talk to as I try to build up this drone delivery company's business? Because I think, and again, I haven't thought I do this intuitively. I haven't like put a formula to this, but if I were to back into a formula, I think naturally, psychologically, if a person introduces you to somebody else, they're more pot committed to their relationship with you.
yeah, it's such a powerful thing. And I'm guessing sometimes the person says, oh, let me think about it, and then they just
Yeah.
never get back to you, and that's okay. It's just like sometimes they say, oh yeah, and it's just, I think you posted something on LinkedIn recently about like, with business development, you have a lot of conversations and they're not all great. And I think you said you have like you got to kiss some frogs, right? And
Yeah.
and someone saying no, I can't think of anyone right now is not kissing a frog. It's just if you're always expecting the answer to be like, yes, I've got, I'm going to introduce you to the CEO of XYZ company, you're going to be disappointed. But just put the question out there. If they say yes, great. If not, not a big deal.
And you got to do it yourself too,
Yeah.
right? Meaning, if somebody asks you for an introduction to your network, you should be willing to open yourself up. If you like, don't be a frog yourself,
Yes.
and be a good shepherd. I'm an odd one. I will take a meeting with pretty much anybody who reaches out to me on LinkedIn and asks for my time. I will take a meeting, even if they're trying to sell me something that I don't want to buy. I'll tell them at the top. I'm not interested in buying what you're trying to sell me, but happy to meet you to see if we can help each other.
Hmm.
In that, I will have 20 to 25% of my meetings be a complete waste of time. But hey, 70 to 75% are great.
Yeah,
So
that's a
it's a worthwhile
great.
trade-off.
And when you're going back to what you said at the beginning, if you're talking about relationship building, the important versus urgent, like 75% of conversations being positive, like leads to, again, you're not selling magazine subscriptions. So it's not like you need to have that, a lower success rate is fine because each one could potentially lead to something very big as opposed to like needing everyone to sort of, you know, to churn basically.
Yeah.
So this is great. And I think I want to extrapolate this a little bit further beyond like for small business people like myself, solopreneurs, obviously for business development people. But I think this entire idea kind of comes back to the Harvey McKay thing of like digging your well before you're thirsty. I think anyone, even if you're not in any kind of sales role or business development role or self-employed role, could benefit from this approach. Like even if you work in a corporate America job or corporate anywhere job or whatever you do, this idea of building relationships, because who knows in a year where you might be in 5 years, and plus who knows who you might be able to help along that way. So I think there's a lot of value here regardless of the ultimate outcome of selling or developing. Just the relationship building I think is a huge benefit.
Well, yeah, absolutely. I mean, as I look back on my life and my career, look, I haven't done particularly well financially. I haven't achieved kind of a SVP title at a publicly traded company or anything like that. But I am rich as hell in relationships,
Yeah.
and it comes down to what you want, introvert or extrovert, right? People. people want to be close to good people in their lives, I feel like the approach I've taken has served me really well. Now, I wish I'd made some different decisions professionally that might have yielded more financial results, but hey, I'm competent. I think that'll work itself out. What I do know is if I needed help tomorrow, there are literally over 100 people I could call who would give me help tomorrow.
which is amazing. And I think a lot of us have that to a degree. Like if I really start thinking about people who would take my call, it's probably a lot, but these are not in relationships I'm nurturing or following up on. It's funny, right? When I come to business development, business up and down, and I've never liked networking, that introversion thing. But every time I think, oh, I should do more networking, and I hate, networking events, networking happy hour. But then I think, kind of like this, it's like I don't need to go to a happy hour and meet random people. I just got to go back to all of my friends and all of my contacts who I just haven't had a conversation with in weeks, months, years, and just reach out to them. But maybe with a tiny bit more intention, kind of like you're saying, like, I do want to catch up. I want to hear what you're doing, and I want to see if I can help you. But I also would like to let you know, hey, here's what I'm up to. And if you know anyone you could introduce me to, that would be great. And
Absolutely. And look, it takes a lot of calls. When Kitchen United, the company I helped start, failed at the end of 2023. I'd spent 7 years of my life on it, most of my 40s. And I didn't have work for 6 months. I didn't know what I was going to do. I didn't have work, actually, real work for a year and a half. And I licked my wounds for a while and went off to India and tried to recover. And then at the beginning of 2025, so I took a year to just get my head straight. The beginning of 2025, I started making calls and I made countless calls. I mean, hundreds and hundreds of calls, just reconnecting with people. And it took 6 months before I landed a real gig. Um, um, but in that intervening time, I got to reconnect with so many people and learn what they were doing, and share what I was hoping to do. And it filled me with love. It is, it's something that, you know, you might be at a big corporate job or at a hedge fund or whatever it might be. That's Nothing is secure anymore. You never know when you'll be in need.
mm-hmm.
So maintaining these relationships that you've developed over a lifetime is terribly important. And then building new ones, and then nurturing those.
Yeah, and I like the fractal method. You're building new ones, but you just build new ones by building, like you said, getting a friend to introduce you instead of just walk. I mean, you can do both, but all right. We've got a little bit of time left, but I realize there's at least two topics I still want to touch upon. So I'm going to pivot off the development relationship building as much as I could keep talking about that and getting ideas from you to help me, selfishly. But the two things I want to talk about is first, because you touched upon this and you've been very vocal or open about this with some of your content on LinkedIn, but you said you kind of went through a tough period. Um, and you had multiple things in your life sort of go haywire at the same time, and you were feeling down, but you managed to. Obviously, you're doing very well now. You kind of pulled yourself out of it. You made some decisions, some introspection, and to whatever extent you're comfortable, I'd love to just hear kind of a little bit about that story and experience, and kind of what you went through, and then sort of what you did to. Because I think a lot, especially in this day and age with the layoffs and the uncertainty and the crazy world and AI, and I think a lot of people. I'm hearing this from my clients is like just a lot of uncertainty, and people are, and even though they haven't had that cliff drop off yet, I think the things you could share would help people in terms of how to kind of keep going and how to pivot when things go wrong.
Absolutely. Happy to be open about it. I think it's important to be open about struggles for the benefit of others. I was 38 when life just kind of fell apart, and it all fell apart in a 3 month period. I had been in a very trying marriage for 11 years. I wanted to leave that marriage. I was diagnosed bipolar. This is October, November of like 2015, I think,
Mm-hmm.
maybe 2014. I was running a startup that I couldn't run anymore. So there were three big things happening in my life at the same time. One, I was hospitalized in New York for a mental health episode. Two, I was getting divorced, and three, I had to shut my company down. And when all of that hit, in the 3 month period, um, genuinely didn't know what to do with myself. My parents flew in from India. They stayed with me in the one bedroom I moved into out of a 5 bedroom house.
Wow.
I was no longer seeing my kids. After having a severe manic episode, I had a severe depressive episode. My company, the team came to me and said, you've got to shut this company down. You cannot manage your divorce, your mental health, and us. So I spent 5 years of my life trying to build a company. It was very difficult to say I was ready to walk away from it. I fought super hard against that. Um, I Everything literally just fell apart in a 3 month period. I had a lot of support from a few good friends of mine from college, from my sister, from my family, from my parents, from my cousins, um, and uh, um, and it it slowly came back together. And I think the couple of things that I learned from it were one, when life is shit, let life be shit for a little while. You don't
Hmm.
need to rebound immediately. You can rely on your support group to support you. Um, things do get better, but they get better with time. And then the other thing is once the fog clears, then you will be a better representative of yourself for your next professional or personal journey. For example, at that time, recently divorced or whatnot, I started dating again way before I should have started dating again. Should just
Hmm.
never have been back out in the market. And Wouldn't recommend that for people who are recently divorced. I didn't start looking for a job immediately. Look, I bounced back. I got really lucky again through my network. I met somebody who was a friend of a friend who was recruiting for McDonald's, got into the interview process, got the job. And I'll tell you, I think the main reason I got the job is McDonald's was looking for people who had successfully demonstrated their capabilities in the startup community in the Bay Area. As my company was failing, or as I was shutting my company down, one of my investors told me, or potential investors told me, "Hey, instead of writing this off, why don't we issue you a tiny percentage of equity in our company, and then we'll have a press release that says you sold your company to ours." And I was like, "That's great. That's a lifesaver. Let's do it." So we did it. Got the interview at McDonald's. First interview I had, the lady interviewing me, Kara Kizior, said, "Congratulations, you just sold your company." And my response was, "Actually, let me tell you the truth."
Oh.
And I told her, I was like, I, was getting divorced, couldn't manage. I was very ashamed of being bipolar at that time, so I
Hmm.
didn't admit to that. But um, uh, getting divorced, had to shut my company down, and at the 11th hour, somebody gave me a tiny piece of equity so that we could issue a press release. And when I got the job, she came to me and said, "You were the most honest candidate that I interviewed."
It's so
Um,
fascinating. Sorry to interrupt you, but that's so fascinating
yeah,
because you think so many people would have let the shine stay and not reveal the deep underneath and been like, "Oh, thank you. Yeah, I'm very successful by selling my
yeah.
company." And but that honesty, that can, like, I think it just comes back to authentic connection, right? That's that like relationship thing. So sorry to interrupt, but keep going.
Yeah, no, that was the end of the story. It just people have failures, man. Everybody goes through their own stuff. Everybody does. And, as rosy as the picture might seem on Facebook or LinkedIn, there is a there are wounds that people carry. And the more and more I've been willing and open and self-confident enough to reveal my wounds, the more I've gotten out of my relationships, the more I've gotten out of my career. and the more at peace I am in life. So it's in our community, we're both Indian. It is definitely not something that people are open about to say
Hmm.
that they're bipolar or recovering from alcoholism or schizophrenic or suicidal or whatnot, right? And that's so sad because that is just a part of the human condition, and sharing about it helps the human. So I am very open about it now, and hopefully that transparency and vulnerability can help someone. But I can't live any other way now. So I did go through the depths of despair. I mean, real low depths. And then I went through it again 10 years later at 48, when the company I had invested 7 years of my life failed. And I didn't know what to do with myself, and I didn't have savings, and I felt like I was, uh, my 25th year Penn reunion was while my company was failing, and I couldn't go because the company was failing, but I didn't want to go because I wasn't a success.
Yeah.
And I didn't want to be around people who were vice presidents at Citigroup and this and that, and retired already. I just didn't want to face the music that way. And if I had to do it all over again, I would go, right? I can walk with my head held high, despite the missteps I've made in life, if I'm just open about learning from them, admitting them, accepting them, forgiving myself for them, and moving forward.
Yeah, there's so many great lessons there. I just think the being open and authentic is such a important thing, and it seems like kind of the theme of this episode is like both times it was sort of your relationships and networks that pulled you out. You know, whether it was your parents, your investor who connected you, who threw out a lifeline for you, the your network you said after recently that led you here. So let's talk briefly about that. The other thing I want to talk about, which we probably won't have time today, was your story when you were CEO. And about how you kind of led a turnaround. But I realized that when I was researching for my book, you and I talked about it, and I talked to a bunch of people. I wasn't able to fit those stories into the context of the book; just didn't work flow wise. But I have them all saved, so I'm probably going to create a second piece of content, like an article that talks about that story. So we don't need to go into it here. That's a little plug for my newsletter. But let's talk about kind of what this led to now, because you sound, you went through these depths and all these problems, and two businesses you started, you had to shut down, which when no one anticipates shutting down a business when they start. They want to either have it last forever or exit. But you seem to be in a very happy place now with your career. And you're doing something that I think is sort of new in that you don't hear about. A lot of people are confused by what it is. So, just in the short time we have left, could you share a little bit about what it means to be a fractional? Is it CMO? Are you in the CMO space or?
I call myself a chief business officer
Okay.
again because it's a little squishy. And fractional is just a fancy way of saying part-time. And so what I do is I represent multiple companies, helping them meet their prospects, raise funds, do PR, and then close business or partners to increase their enterprise value. And honestly, I love it, Avish. I could imagine no other life. I don't think I'll ever have a job again. Couple of pros to being fractional. One, you manage your own time. I fundamentally believe that we've moved from a world where you used to have to manage your life around your work to a world where you can manage your work around your life. I'm pleased to say that I'm able to do that. Worked out of Barcelona earlier this year. We'll be working out of Mexico City early next year. I have incredible flexibility. Second, it's really intellectually stimulating to be able to work and represent multiple companies. The amount of contact switching I do is really kind of neuron firing for me. It gets me all fired up to talk about drones one day and then talk about a robotic burger maker the next hour, and then a gamification the third hour. I mean, it's super interesting. Third, uh, like this follows intuition. If you work fractionally and you load on multiple clients, you can probably make more than a single job would offer you. So it is financially remunerative. Um,
And
and
you've got more security because if one goes away, you've got the
Exactly.
others.
And that was going to be my final point is it's very secure. You got to be good at business development. You gotta spend time doing business development, but it is the way of the future. The gig economy is not just for Uber and DoorDash drivers, right? The gig economy is something that is spreading into the white collar class, and I have fully embraced it. I'm a passionate advocate for it. I run something called Fractional Forum, which is a monthly meetup for fractional executives. There's no cost to it. We have a speaker. We share best practices. I really encourage all my friends to do it. I don't think it's right for everybody. If you're in your late 20s and don't have a couple of decades of experience under your belt, you probably need to amass some of that experience.
Now, is that
You
forum for
do
people who aren't fractionals but are interested in moving into that space, or is it just for people who are your fractional forum?
It's both. It's both. It's for anybody who's fractional curious, I guess. Um, yeah. So man,
And
it's it's a
did
great
those?
life.
Because it's funny. I went to your LinkedIn this morning just to kind of revisit kind of what you've been up to, and I forgot for a moment about the fractional thing, and I'm like, oh, I know that's the company he's at. And then because it said till present, and then the next one down said, this year till present, and I'm like, oh, that's right. You've got like 8 companies listed there as like from this year and still there. I'm like, oh, that's right. So um, it's just really cool. Did all those come about just again through your relationships and reaching out and like, did you just start reaching out to people saying this is what I'm doing? I want to be a
Yeah.
fractional
Yeah,
CBO
and
and.
it's very self-fulfilling. I mean, I talk to a lot of people every day, and now that a lot of people know that I do what I do, I get introductions without solicitation, right? Like people will just say, "Hey, maybe you want to meet this guy." But the other thing that's worked really well for anybody who wants to go fractional is LinkedIn posting, man. I post on LinkedIn every day religiously. I engage with people who post, who comment. I comment on other people's posts. I got a call maybe 3 months ago from the CEO of a company, Series C company. He called me up. I hadn't talked to him in 10 years since when he was at some other company. I said, "Why are you calling?" He said, "Well, I want to work with you." I was like, "We haven't talked in 10 years. Why do you want to work with me?" He said, "Three of my account executives follow you on LinkedIn, and they all said that we should work together." And I didn't even know who these people were. I had
Oh
no
wow.
idea who these account executives were, but they followed me on LinkedIn, saw my content. I rarely post about myself and what I do. I often post about my clients or my thoughts on business or recovering from failure or uh, the Shake Shack burger I just ate. But I'm clearly somebody who has restaurant expertise in my profile and my content. And I take the time to do it. And I know for some people it's hard to put yourself out there. My suggestion and guidance is at best, you get a call from somebody you didn't expect to get a call from, and at worst, it disappears into the ether. There's no downside.
Love it. Well, we're about to finish up then. This has been great. I got a lot of takeaways for myself. I know listeners did as well. I'm going to finish up with one final question. Before I get to that, if people want to connect with you, learn more about you, follow your LinkedIn, what are the best ways and places they can stay in touch with you or connect with you?
LinkedIn is the best first name, last name, and I think I have a bunch of people connected with me now, so I think I'm generally the top search result for my first name, last name.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
And I'll
uh,
put a
so
link to your profile in the show notes as
Yeah,
well.
that would be great. And I'm very responsive. If I'm awake, I will respond within an hour. And again, happy to chat, happy to help people as you want to, if you want to transition to fractional. Happy to help share tips and tricks in more depth on business development. Happy to just make fun of Avish,
Oh.
whatever you want to
Yeah,
talk
you can
about.
share old stories.
Yeah.
All right, awesome. Well, I'm going to finish up with one last question. It's what I end all my podcast interviews with. I talk about the idea of saying yes and instead of yes but, because I believe the world would be a better place if everyone just started with a default of yes and instead of yes but. So, what is one small thing that you believe that if everyone did just this one small thing, it will make the world a better place?
That's first of all, I want to commend you on the book and the ownership of the Yes and movement. I think it is so important and can change a whole life with that attitude.
Thank you.
And my yes and would be yes and let's meet.
Mm-hmm.
So I think there's power to being physically present with other people. And I uh, try to take people out for lunch, coffee, dinner at my expense when I first meet them. Nothing better than breaking bread. I'm in the restaurant industry. Nothing better than breaking bread together. And you never know where those relationships will lead you. So put yourself out there and meet somebody in person.
Love it. That is fantastic. I'm inspired to break out of my introversion shell now and move forward. So, Atul, thank you so much, very much, everyone listening. Go connect with him on LinkedIn. I follow you. I comment on your posts because you're always posting interesting stuff that is clearly not AI slop, which I really appreciate. I love your stuff.
Yeah.
Thanks, and hopefully we can connect again soon.
Thank you for having me on, Abish. Great to see you again.